is Suit Up Sports. Suit Up Sports. Where opinions are as sharp as a tailored suit. No fluff, no gimmicks, just unfiltered, hard-hitting takes on sports and a whole lot more. It's time to suit up. Now here's your host, DJ the Suit Stout.
Welcome to Suit Up Sports. I'm DJ the Suit Stout, along with 10-year NFL vet Frank Garcia. Frank, how you doing?
I'm doing great, buddy. What a great weekend here in Charlotte. Great weather, and glad to be back on doing another Suit Up Sports podcast.
Yep, Big D's over there produced the show for us. We've got our golf guru, Charlie Nance, joining us to talk PGA. Before we get to Charlie, though, I just want to mention, and you can see it on the scroll, but those of you watching or listening, tomorrow night is the third annual Joey Logano, three-time NASCAR champion Foundation's charity concert featuring Jordan Davis, big-time Jordan Davis at Coyote Joe's. We're giving away a pair of tickets two different ways. You could look at the bottom of the screen there, follow us on our socials, like our post, repost the post, and follow us. Or you can simply email dj@suitupsports.com. We're going to randomly pick out two lucky winners. Each winner will get a pair of tickets for tomorrow night. The show will be sold out. Joey Logano and a lot of the NASCAR crew always is in attendance. Joey will not be singing. No, Joey will not be singing, but Jordan Davis will, and Guy Thrigdon will, who finished second in The Voice years ago.
Yeah, good.
He has a great voice, so it's always a great time. Charlie will actually probably be out there too.
Well, people that don't know, maybe they don't know about Charlie. He's also one of the longtime hosts, Charlie, for the Charlie and Debbie show on WSOC.
103, WSOC 103.7. Charlie and his beautiful wife have been holding down the number one spot in that day part for about 17 years, I believe, Charlie?
Almost 20, 19. We're in our 20th year right now.
Lord have mercy. Lord have mercy. There's 3 years that I blanked out on somewhere. I don't know why. I don't know why, but I could probably come up with a few.
I was going to say, I got a pretty good idea.
So let's get to the PGA Championship yesterday, Charlie. I thought that, we talked to you on Friday and went through kind of what we all expected to see. I think it lacked the drama that maybe we hoped from the standpoint of once Scheffler kind of got in gear, when DeChambeau tied him, he fell away immediately. When Rahm tied him, he fell away immediately. And Frank and I were watching together, and it was funny when Rahm tied Scheffler yesterday. I think it was the 10th or 11th hole. Frank said this is where the top-notch athletes in the world can flip a switch on, usually, where they just focus and tell that story.
Well, I was
Frank.
telling him a story about Scott Verplank and I were playing one day, Charlie, and you'd get a kick out of this because I'm sure you've seen it, with these, these golf pros. And, the reason why they're pros is because they can go out and work on a lot of different things. But when you've challenged their competitiveness in a sport that they are pros at, they have the ability to turn the light switch on. I was playing with Verplank we're playing at one of the Greensboro tournaments a while back, probably 20 years ago. And on the front nine, I was playing pretty well. I beat him by 2 shots, and I had just made my money in the NFL. And he was playing the back tees. I was playing the members tees. But they were playing a game called Pick Your Pony. And, the caddy and him, they went out there and they picked the best guy in the foursome. They bet on hole by hole with these guys. But I said, oh, that's interesting. I want to take you on now. And I'm going to tell you, he says, oh, really? You want to take me on? Okay, well, that sounds like a bet. And the level of competitiveness and the banter and the chatter went from giggling, having fun to zoned in and focus. And I think he shot like 1 over even on the front, but he went to 4 under the back like that.
Yeah. And
kind of what Scottie did in this tournament. I felt like, Scottie just knew he had to make par and let these guys come and get them. And when they got close, the green light went on, and that's when he birdied 10. And I think he, had a couple pars, could have made a couple more birdies very easily, but just played safe and, made the birdies when he needed to.
Yeah, we talked on Friday, and we discussed how I thought that Scottie was going to win just based on what I saw on Thursday when he had a Tiger like 2 under par, where it looked like he was going to shoot 75 or 76, and you turn around and, oh, wow, he's 2 under. And if that was his worst round, everybody was in trouble. And then over the weekend, and especially Saturday, and you bring up the fact that we had no drama on Sunday. Gosh, I hate to compare anybody to Tiger. I really do, but we're starting to see some really scary stuff. How many times in Tiger's run did you see a spectacular third round, a spectacular Saturday to make sure that he got into the final group or had a 2 or 3 shot lead heading into Sunday? You saw that all the time. And then what you saw on Sunday was Tiger just doing what Scottie did yesterday and waiting for everyone else who was having to take chances to catch him, waiting for them to make the big mistake and to fall away, and he just coasts in. Tiger made a career doing that, and that's what we saw Scottie Scheffler do this weekend.
Let me ask you this, because I asked Frank this question while we were watching it again. Yeah, I know enough about golf to be dangerous, but not nearly on the level as you guys. And this has been an argument that has been made before. But, when we were talking about Scheffler and just what he's done so far, what I think he's 28 years old, and
he's
how
won 3 majors, won 15 times on tour.
15 times on tour. And we talked about what Tiger did, because obviously that's going to be the natural comparison. And when Jordan Spieth got hot years ago, that was a comparison. And we saw that, we've now seen that he couldn't hold a candle to what Tiger did, at least from a consistent standpoint. Not that he still didn't have time. But I asked Frank about the competition. Like, was Tiger's competition as strong as the competition that Scheffler's facing now? And to me, it seems like Scheffler's competition is stronger. Frank brought up a good point that Tiger played in 3 different decades, so he covered a lot of different players.
And if not for Tiger Woods, Mickelson would have been Scottie Scheffler. Scottie Scheffler, Mickelson would have been the same thing that Scheffler is today of what Mickelson was back then. I think they're about the same talent level. And it's just, when you're comparing somebody, this for me, and Charlie can answer this obviously for him, but Tiger is just on a different planet.
In my opinion, there were 2 when Tiger was around that Tiger kept from really having amazingly elite careers, and both these guys are in the Hall of Fame. I think Ernie Els has 5 or 6 major championships. Ernie was legitimately robbed out of 2 or 3 more from Tiger. Phil would have won a couple of more. Those were the 2 big ones, and that's really the biggest difference, I think, between Nicklaus's run, which is unprecedented, 18 wins, 19 seconds. But along the way, Tom Watson won 8 majors. Lee Trevino won 7 majors. You had guys who won quite a few other majors. Tiger just swallowed up everything in the room. I think that the depth of field now is greater than it's ever been because of the equipment. I think that equipment has marginalized greatness to a certain extent, or at least it's made guys who are at the back end of the field, if they have a hot week putting, they can win because the ball just isn't doing crazy things anymore. So I think that the depth of competition, and these guys coming out of college. There were 2 guys, Ben Griffin and Ryan Gerard, are both out of North Carolina in the last 5 years, and those guys were in it, all weekend. The caliber of guys coming out of college now is so much greater that it just adds to that depth of field. And I think that the depth of field now is greater than it's ever been. But at the top, I don't know. It's hard to say. I think that you bring up Scheffler's 15 wins. Let's point out that all 15 of those wins have come since February of 2022.
Yeah.
So we're talking in just over 3 years.
He's
got
moving
15
fast.
wins. 15 wins, 3 majors, 2 TPCs, and a gold medal.
And he has a chance, if I'm not mistaken, to win to get his Grand Slam, right? If he wins the British Open this year.
Well, he's got to win the U.S. Open and then the Open Championship. And look, the problem with winning with that last one is that last one is such a crapshoot because of weather. Winning the Open Championship is all about, I think, almost 70% what your draw is. If you got the best draw of the weather, the weather eliminates half the field at the Open Championship. Now, do I like him at Oakmont? Oh my God, yes. It's a course that you drive it straight, it's long, and you putt great, and you'll win. Right now, people are like, well, Scottie's an average putter now. Scottie is the 19th ranked putter on tour. That's better than average.
Yeah, no doubt. You brought up equipment earlier, and I was reading an article this morning, and I did not know that, number one, the PGA test drivers before every tournament, and that Rory, I guess, lost his driver this tournament, and so did Scheffler, that his driver was disallowed before this tournament. And so I'm wondering, as I'm reading this, why would they disallow a driver? These guys, number one, could get a new driver every week if they wanted to, but so why would they disallow a driver? And I found it interesting because the reason they basically disallow it is the same reason when you and I coached our kids in baseball and they would get a new bat, as that composite would break down, they would get hotter. And obviously we would want that to happen with the bats. Well, these guys would want that with their golf clubs. And so when Scheffler struggled with his driver a little bit this weekend, especially yesterday on the front nine, I wonder if that had anything to do with it.
Oh, absolutely. And that's what's, the things that are interesting about all of this driver stuff is, we had a discussion about whether or not mud balls should be allowed. And my argument was, well, the whole field had to deal with it. My problem with their driver testing is that they randomly select 50 guys. If you're going to test if you're going to test drivers, everybody get on the monitor and let's test everyone's equipment. And that way you really have a fair thing. And, Xander Schauffele said the same thing. You're right. That's what happens is with the ball, we can't relate to the swing speed and ball speed that these guys are hitting these drivers with. We just can't. And so it breaks down the face, the thinness of the face even more, and they just become hotter. They do. And it shows how and these guys are scientific as hell. Frank's been on the trailers. I've been on the trailers. You've got rocket scientists in there dialing these guys in with their golf balls, with their drivers, their shafts, everything. But even as picky and meticulous as they are, and even as scientific as they are, there are still minute, undetectable differences from one driver to another, even though in terms of components, in terms of adjustment and everything, they should be the same. They just aren't. And it takes a while to get used to it. And, the thing is you're wearing in that driver, you're naturally getting used to the way the ball reacts when you do certain things. And it just takes time. Look, 2 weeks from now, both Rory and Scottie will be completely dialed in with this driver.
Yeah. It's funny. We sit here and talk about the drivers all day, but that's not what wins championships. And, I know the chicks dig it and Bryson DeChambeau can hit it, 400 yards and all these things. But really what it comes down to is when you're winning these championships, who's making the fewest putts. Yeah. And, that's what's, so interesting. I'm putting yourself in position to make those putts, obviously, is the objective, but you still have to pour them in. And, that's where you say Scottie's the 19th, best in the world at doing it. But it just doesn't feel the same as maybe, and I know we're trying to compare him to, Tiger, but, when Tiger made it, it was, you knew it was going in. Scottie has those moments, I guess, in spurts, but just not the same. But that's really where the difference is for me, Charlie's, in the putting.
Well, and also, I think the most fascinating guy to watch right now is DeChambeau for this reason. He is an all-world driver of the golf ball. And even though he makes me so uncomfortable watching him putt, he's a tremendous putter, but I don't know if I've ever seen a two-time major champion and a guy who is on page one of the leaderboard seemingly at every one of these things, who is that awful from 150 yards in. He is really, really average from 150 yards in and makes some awful mental mistakes. He made one on Saturday that was astonishing to me, and it was on 17. He was hitting into the wind on that par 3. And Frank will tell you this, it's absolutely true. When you're hitting into the wind, you need to club back. You need to take a club longer to take spin off of what you're doing, because the harder you swing at a short iron, the more spin you're going to have. The more spin you have, it gets up in the wind and kills it. To give you an example, Scottie Scheffler hit just a nice, smooth cut 7 into that pin high on Saturday. Bryson tried to muscle a 9-iron, and the second it left his club, you could almost hear it spinning on TV, and it came up short and spun into the water, and he looked surprised. I was looking around like, why are you surprised? No one who plays golf on planet Earth is surprised by what you're doing.
Well, and and he, speaking of scientists and all that, I mean, there's nobody more dialed into his swing. I mean, he makes his own clubs and all that's been reported on. But he, after the tournament yesterday, I thought brought up an interesting point as well. And I didn't take it as if he was blaming his equipment, but he brought up and alluded to his equipment being a problem several times, and that he was going to do all he can do and work night and day to get it fixed before the U.S. Open. And one of the things he talked about was the ball, because he hits it so hard. And I guess, again, you guys are the experts, but for somebody that hits the ball as far as he does, they usually don't hit it also as high as he does. And he was saying that the wind was messing with his ball, and he said it actually affects Scottie some too, because he hits the ball pretty hard. But he said that, before the U.S. Open, he's really going to spend a lot of time on hopefully getting a new ball that will cooperate with that, because he felt that in this tournament in particular, because it was windy, that, normally he can control it better, and he feels like he needs a ball that will work better.
It feels like that's an excuse to me.
Yeah, I didn't get the feeling. Normally I would say, they got a big excuse. I didn't get the feeling it was.
Here's why. Let me tell you, it's an excuse for me. Is because he has the ability, like Scottie, to flight back and to hit a 7-iron the same way. The problem is he's not willing to do that, and he thinks golf is about science and it's not about feel, right? And that's where good is great and great is exceptional. Is that the people that have the ability to do that are going to win in those different types of conditions, like the Open, like what we saw when there's a little bit of wind, and those types of things. And for me, that's where Tiger and some of the greats of all time, realize that if I have to continue to morph and work on my game, and whether it's the flight or whether it's the distance or, a lot of different things. And that's what makes good golfers great, is they have the ability to hit the same club 3 different levels, 4 different levels, 5 different levels, depending on how they swing. And they can move the ball either way, but they can control it to know exactly where they're doing it. Every one of those guys on tour have the ability to do that. The great ones have the ability to do that under pressure when it counts.
Yeah, and it will be interesting to see, because obviously, because he talked about it, that'll be a storyline going in the U.S. Open. Did he change his clubs, or did he get a new ball? That'll be a storyline. So we'll be interested to see what he does with that. Because, one of the other things that I was...
I love that headline. Bryson DeChambeau's balls, subject to U.S. Open.
Yeah, well, it very well could be one. But the other thing that I thought was interesting in this tournament, and again, Frank and I talked about this a little bit while we were watching it, was it seems that, Scheffler has been kind of the golden boy the last couple, since 2022, when he really started winning almost every tournament. And then he gets arrested, unfairly and all that stuff. And he seems like he's, you watch the documentary on Netflix, and he's just the super nice guy who, has this nice little family. But have you noticed that maybe lately, and I noticed it with me yesterday, for instance, that maybe he's becoming not so perfectly clean now, where
likable,
not dislikable. But I'll give you an example. If Bryson DeChambeau and Scottie Scheffler are on the last day,
popular.
No, but I'm just saying, as far as pulling interest, if those two are on the last day, 9 holes left, and they're even, I'm pulling for DeChambeau. And it's not because I don't like Scheffler. It's just something about,
he doesn't have the charisma that
and I think a lot of people are doing the same thing. I feel like some people, maybe he's a little too boring. Although this tournament, he certainly wasn't boring. He F-bombed it on TV a couple times. He slammed his club down. He complained about the mud balls. Yesterday when we were watching, he had a putt, I believe it was a chip right off the green that had mud on the ball. And we brought you up, Charlie. We're like, man, he should be able to clean this off. If it's on the green 2 feet closer, he could clean it off.
Yeah. This was always kind of a knock on Jack. Jack was so fairways, greens, 2-putt, beat you, that he was boring. And that was a knock on Jack, was he lacked charisma. He lacked electricity because he was boring. It was, people don't think about Jack being electric until Jack was 46 years old in 1986 at Augusta, when he was the old man and all of a sudden it became rootable. Jack was very robotic. Arnold Palmer was the one who had charisma. Seve Ballesteros was the one who had charisma. Lee Trevino was the one who had charisma. Jack Nicklaus didn't have charisma. Jack Nicklaus just beat you like a drum. And that's kind of where Scottie is right now. Bryson, because of all of his quirks and idiosyncrasies and crazy stuff he says, he's an electric factory. Of course we love to watch him. And and he's almost like a tragic figure, because you think he gets in his own way so much that you have to root for him. But
I can relate to that.
Well, Charlie, let's talk about some of the other golfers that made, they kind of knocked on the door a little bit, but then disappeared. Jon Rahm, I think, is one of those likable guys that when he was winning, he had a little bit of that flair, that Sergio flair, that Seve's flair, where, he kind of wore his emotions on his sleeves and would get after it. And, he would grind and grunt, and you could feel, the way he played the game versus a guy like, Scottie, where he just goes and ho-hums and drums you. But he got close and then fell off. Was that just a matter of not being there for a certain time, or what was he lacking?
Here's what. Look, I think he got a real bad break on 14. And I still don't know how his putt broke that hard to the right on 14. He must have pushed it. But anyway, he got
It
a
had
bad
mud
break.
on it.
He got to clean that. But the thing, I heard somebody commenting on him going after that pin on 17. He's chasing Scottie Scheffler. He knows the Iceman is behind him, and Iceman is not going to mess up. So you have to take chances. And everybody remembers, Justin Thomas, when he won the PGA in 17, that was the exact same flag position that was in yesterday. And Justin hit an unbelievable shot underneath that hole to knock in birdie and seal the tournament. Well, Rahm has to make a move, and the wind is blowing right to left, so it's dangerous. But he's got to try to draw the ball into that pin position, and he had to take that chance. I heard somebody saying, well, he obviously overswung and he was nervous. I'm like, he's a two-time major champion. He's not nervous. He knows what he has to do. He had to take the chance, and it didn't work out for him. It's not a matter of being prepared. It's that he was in the position of being the chaser instead of the chasee instead of the chaser instead of the chasee.
Well, and that's the risk, I think, for that 17 pin placement with the wind blowing right to left. If you hit that draw, it's going to actually put overspin on your ball when it hits the green to kick forward, and that's what we saw him do. Really, the right shot to that pin would be a cut against the wind to hold it and land soft and put the side spin on it, or at least just kind of hit it and let it release a little bit. But if you have any type of overspin on that type of shot, it's gone. It's going to hit and kick into the water.
Yeah, I was impressed. I was impressed with Rahm, though, how, because that was the first time that he's been, in contention in a major, in 2 years, I think it was. And
yeah, he won the Masters in 23.
Yeah, so it's been a while, and then obviously he's been on live, so you're not really seeing much of him. But I was impressed that once he did start falling apart, and the wheel, he missed that one putt that went to the right, and then the wheels kind of came off. But normally John Rahm's the guy you're seeing throwing the clubs and getting ticked off. And I thought his interview afterwards, when they kind of asked him about that, and he said that he goes, yeah, am I embarrassed about the way I finished? Yeah, I am. But, I also have learned to get out of my own way now. And I'm lucky to play golf for a living. And it sounds like he's matured a little bit, and which makes me think that, and this leads me kind of to my next question, going into the US Open, which is at Rosemont, and which is in Pittsburgh, right? Which is, I know it's been there before. Yeah. Oakmont, excuse me. Rory, I think, has won it there before. Who are
the last two U.S. Opens there were Dustin Johnson and Angel Cabrera. Cabrera held off Tiger Woods down the stretch, and DJ held off the whole field.
Well, I want to get kind of a quick preview of what you guys think to look for in that one. But before I do, I want to start with Rory, because Rory has a bad tournament. He barely makes the cut, never could get it going, and then refuses to talk to the media all 4 days. Like, when are these guys going to learn? You already have a stereotype of being a little rich, stuck-up snob, silver spoon in your mouth, 14 Bentleys, your wife, you wear nickels in your penny loafers, like Carolina fans like Charlie does. But like, when are these dudes gonna grow a pair and freaking face the fire, man? Like, you can't just have it when you win the Masters and you're taking all these stupid pictures of you acting like you don't know there's a camera around and you're glaring off into the sunset. Like, give me a break, Rory. Like, I'm so over Rory. I'm over him.
No, I'm with you on this, and I'm over his selective being the guy that the media love,
Yeah.
And here's how it gets solved. It gets solved real easy. The commissioner of the PGA Tour says, gentlemen, you are now required, as the athletes are in Major League Baseball, Major League or professional football, professional basketball, professional hockey, professional tennis.
Yep.
You are now required to have media obligations. Look, we remember when the Panthers got blowed out in the Super Bowl, and everybody got on Cam Newton's butt for being late to the interview room, but he still had to go and face the music because you're required to do it. And I'm sorry, you're getting Scottie made 3.4 for winning that. Rory made 4.5 for winning the Masters. You made $4.5 million for a week's worth of work. That's pretty good for the
Yeah.
average Joe. The least you can do is go sit in front of some reporters for an uncomfortable 20 or 30 minutes and get it done.
Yeah, and guess what? Guess who the two guys that waited to talk to Scottie when he won the after? DeChambeau waited 45 minutes and Ron waited, I think, 35. Two Live guys, by the way, that took the money and went over to Live, who we all know that story, and Scottie Scheffler has spoken out about that. But those are the two dudes that waited. DeChambeau actually went on air and did an interview when he didn't have to do it. So to me, it makes Roy look really bad. And I was already tired of his crap. I bought into the Masters. I bought into the Masters stuff a little bit because I did think it would be cool to see a guy win a Grand Slam. It was. And now he goes right back to this little rat face, cheese curd eating. I can't stand him now. I'm done with Rory. I'm done with him. And I'm an Irishman, and I'm still done with him.
I'm with you. I have no time for people who use the media selectively in the game of golf. I never saw Tiger not do an interview. I never saw Jack not do an interview. Jean Van de Velde,
Yeah.
who I mean had to want to
one
go
of the biggest choke jobs ever
of all time. Yeah. He came and faced the music. It's just to me, it's an obligation of if you're going to play a professional sport, then you are obligated to talk to the media as the conduit to the people.
Charlie, the Quail Hollow has had some great tournaments. I know, when they have, the regular season tournament here, Wells Fargo, a lot of the golfers come because of the way that they cater to the families and the cars and, the hospitality that they give and the bags that they give the wives and all the little things that they do for the players and their families. But the PGA maybe, didn't do that. The PGA, I think, made a lot of good strides and gave back, with the free drinks and the free food and some of the things. But I think they fell a little bit short with maybe some of the decisions they had. And I think it's become so corporate that it's taken away from some of the experience for the fans and the viewing experience if you went to the event.
Well, but explain about the food, because first of all, I think they did a bad job of and I'm in the marketing business. I didn't know that. My kids told me when
they didn't promote it.
Yeah, like tell everybody what they did, because it's awesome that they did it. I just don't think they did a good enough job promoting it.
If you were a paid ticket holder, if you had a badge going in, food and drink was free, non-alcohol, but food and drink was free.
So you go to any stand, hamburger, Philly cheesesteak, chicken sandwich, whatever you want, free food. I mean, the Kentucky Derby did that when I was there the last time, and I think it's great, especially in a day and age where they're not taking cash anyway, and you're keeping lines moving. But back to Frank's question, I just wanted to mention that because I think they should get credit for that.
Let me repeat the question just so we kind of can maybe get a better idea.
It was about corporate involvement, and it takes away from the average person. And the answer to that question is, well, they got to pay for these purses somehow. And it's just fact. I mean, it's the devil. It's the devil. But if you're going to have purses for these major championships that in 2 years have literally gone up 200%. Then you've got to have somebody pay the bills, and when they pay the bills, he who has the gold makes the rules.
Well, I don't disagree with what you're saying, Charlie, but I feel like that's unfortunately where a lot of these big sporting events have become, Super Bowl included, the NBA final. It's become so corporate that you've priced middle America out of the conversation when it comes to these events. To go to a Panthers game just alone, it's $100 for parking, it's $20 for a beer, it's $200 for the top seats, the seats at the top, not the top seats. It's $2,000 for a top seat, a good seat, and it's just become so corporate that you've priced out the normal fans, and it's, I think, in the NFL it may be a little bit easier to do that because of the product they have on TV. Is it something they're risking in golf?
They're risking it in all sports. I remember when I was a boy and the Oilers were in negotiations to have the Astrodome renovated, and this was when luxury suites were becoming a thing. and a guy did a political cartoon that was a stadium that was nothing but luxury suites, and it had one seat in four corners of the stadium. And the owner of the Oilers at the time, a guy named Bud Adams, said, "Wow, this is the perfect stadium."
Well, it's true. It's true. I know you got to go because I know you're recording your show with Kyle Petty that, again, runs on the weekends on 103.7 WSOC. But before you go, give us a little preview for the U.S. Open. I mean, obviously, Scottie Scheffler is going to be the favorite walking in. Does Rory rebound? Does DeChambeau get his balls corrected? does Rahm learn how to putt under pressure? Give us a little preview of what you're thinking.
Well, now I don't care about anything but DeChambeau's balls. That's all I'm caring about going in.
We're like little high school kids talking about balls. He said balls. He said balls.
Yeah, it's like Beavis and Butthead.
It's look, they're all living in Scheffler's world. Everybody got into the recency bias and the romanticism of Rory winning the career Grand Slam. The bottom line is, in the last 3 years, nobody can hold a candle to what Scheffler's doing right now. It is Tiger-esque, and if the guy's healthy, if the guy's mind's in the right place, and if his game's in the right place, it's him, and then everybody else is going to be chasing him because as much as everybody was on Rory's side and so fired up about Rory, Scheffler dusted him by 12 or 13 strokes.
Yeah, and I want to just remind everybody that Scottie Scheffler last year was the scoring average leader, and I think he was 7th of all time. He had the 7th lowest scoring average of all time. You know who the other 6 were?
Tiger.
Tiger Woods.
Yeah.
So let's lower our comparisons to Tiger. I know it's easy to do because he's doing something great. He ain't Tiger Woods though.
Oh,
You're not yet.
No. I mean, as great as Scheffler has been, he just has to do this for the next
30 years.
12 years.
Yeah.
And then he can,
Correct me if I'm wrong, though. Scheffler did getting married and having a kid out of the way much earlier than Tiger, didn't he? Because isn't that what they always say, that once a golfer gets married and has kids?
So what's next? The strippers and the
Scheffler,
Denny's waitresses?
Scheffler, I think, stays out of that. I think if Scheffler can just stay healthy, I think he's got on that nice family path early enough to maybe where he avoids all that crap.
Yeah, just keep using Uber when you're at the tournament.
yeah,
and
exactly.
and for the Tiger thing, just stay out of Perkins.
Yeah, no Perkins. Definitely no Perkins. Stay out of Vegas. All right. Well, Charlie, thank you for joining us, man. That was great. We'll see you probably in a few weeks right before the U.S. Open, if not before.
Absolutely, brothers. Y'all be good.
Thanks, buddy. Have a good week. Have a good week.
All right.
When Frank and I get back, we're going to break into the Carolina Panthers 2025 schedule. We haven't got into that yet. We're going to take you game by game, give you a quick idea of how we think they'll do next year. The strength of schedule, their opponents, and things of that nature. We'll go through that right after this.
It's time to suit up. Here's your host, DJ the Suit Stout.
Welcome back to Suit Up Sports. I'm DJ the Suit Stout, along with Frank Garcia, Big D behind the control board over there, making us look and sound as good as we possibly can. Thank you to Charlie Nance for joining us, talking PGA golf, and a little look ahead to the U.S. Open, where, like we discussed, Scheffler is going to be everybody's favorite on that one. So if you're going to bet it now, because those odds are only going to go down. Panther schedule came out last week, and we have not had a chance to get into it yet. It's one of those schedules that on paper, when I looked at it, at first I went, man, this is brutal. Because when you look at what these teams that we're playing have added.
I mean, what made you feel like it was brutal? Because when you're drafting as high as you are, typically the NFL, they put together a schedule that's going to be less competitive than if you're a team that's in the playoffs or wins. And the way they do it is they base it on what last year's record was and kind of where they're projected to win this year. And you play a conference or a division, and then you play the worst team in that conference or division. So we really probably have as good a schedule as we could have.
Well, the more I broke it down, and I think the reason I thought that it looked tough on paper is we're playing the AFC East and the NFC West in in the schedule this year. So
who would you have rather played?
Well, let me talk about the teams we're playing, and then I'll tell you. So first of all, we start with the Jaguars. First game at Jacksonville. Obviously, Jacksonville made a lot of got a lot of publicity in the draft for trading up to take Travis Hunter, the two-way player that everybody seems to think is going to be a home run NFL player. And I'm one of those folks. But at Jacksonville, we played there last year. They whooped us. Matter of fact, that was the infamous game where our owner slapped the drink into the crowd at somebody, and they whooped our butts. But I do think that with the additions we've made on defense and adding Tet at receiver, who we all hope is going to be what they hope he is, I think we can win that game in Jacksonville, right? Jacksonville's coming off an awful season. They do have a new coach, which is, I believe, their third in 5 years. Trevor Lawrence has been disappointing, to say the least. If you look at his overall career, he's really had
disappointing from what?
Well, from what everyone thought he would be when he was the first pick in the draft. I mean, he's made the playoffs, I believe, one time.
Similar to Bryce Young?
Well, but Bryce has not been in the league as long as him yet, so we hope that he doesn't follow that path. This is the year for Bryce to break off that path.
Well, I don't want. I'm kind of playing devil's advocate to sit there and challenge, what you're asking, but that's what I do. And my question to you would be, is if you had a choice today, whether you could have Bryce Young or Trevor Lawrence, who you taking? And to me, it's not even close. It's Trevor Lawrence, and it's not even close.
It's close for me. If I had to have a tiebreaker, I would take Trevor Lawrence because he's 6'5". I think that would make a difference. I also think that Trevor Lawrence, he has had a lot of different coaching in the NFL, starting with Urban Meyer, who was a complete train wreck. So I think he still has the ability to get back on track. If I look at the way that Bryce finished last year, I would take Bryce if I knew I was getting that Bryce, because if I knew I was getting that Bryce,
that's
we
one,
don't.
That's one. That's okay. Let me
10 games. Yeah,
that's not even 10. It was 8 games out of how many games has he played?
Well, he's played 2 years. Trevor's played 3 or 4.
He's played a year.
If you actually, I looked at their stats. If you look at their stats, they're very similar this far in. The difference is that Bryce is younger, and so this could be the year he breaks off that track that Trevor's gone down. So that is an interesting question. That's a question that's going to be asked, I'm sure, leading up to that game. But with that being said, the Panthers are going to go in there and again, we hope that their defense is going to be, we obviously spent a lot of draft capital. We spent a lot of free agent capital. We're not done, by the way. I still think they're going to sign a safety. I still think they're going to bring in another DB. But I think the Panthers can go in and win game one. So when we go through this, we're gonna make our we'll do this again as we get closer, because things change, teams change. But for right now, I'm giving the Panthers a W on that first game.
For me, when you look at that first game, obviously the Jaguars, picked before the Panthers did, but when you look at the player that they took, Travis Hunter, he might have been the best player in the draft. I don't know how much I'm going to, because I don't want to play both sides. I'm not going to say he's going to be a big difference maker for Jacksonville and say that, our draft choices aren't going to be big difference makers for us. They're going to help. But where they're going to help is typically in depth, right? I think Hunter has a better opportunity to go in there and have impact right away, than maybe what we drafted, except for our defensive ends. The kid from Texas A&M, I think, has a really good chance to come in and have impact, right away.
You got to think. I got to believe Tet's going to start, though, don't you think?
I do think he's going to start.
Top 10, I think he'll start.
But what kind of offense are you going to be running here? Is it going to be a run first offense? Is there going to be, play action, throw the ball down? I don't think it's going to. I don't think it's going to be.
I think they'll stay run first. But let me ask you this: did you see the film of Travis Hunter at camp with Jacksonville? And so all the analysts, and again, I don't know a route tree from a oak tree, but they're giving him a lot of crap, saying that his route running, he has too many steps, he's horrible getting out of his breaks.
That's right.
So the reason I bring that up is I don't know if he's going to be that effective at receiver right away. Maybe it'll be a DB more right away. I don't know.
And I had this conversation with Dave Gettleman. This is several years ago when he was the GM for the Panthers. Former GM for the Panthers. I went to one of their practices when I was on the radio, and obviously I played with the Panthers. So I had a lot of friends on the team. Ron Rivera was there. This was Cam Newton. This is like 2013, 2014, right before they made that Super Bowl run. And they had a great team. They had a really good roster. But Dave Gettleman, I think it was with one of the receivers that they had, and we were talking about how he ran routes, and it looked like he was rounding his routes a lot, and he didn't really have the ability to run the tree which is the Don Coryell tree, which is the one through, all the different routes that you run in the NFL, and being able to master those things. And he goes, that's the biggest challenge that we have, Frank, is that these kids coming from college, they run 3 routes. They run a go, they run a stop, they run a slant. They run like a smoke, swing pass, but they don't really understand how to run these routes. So that's our biggest challenge from college to pros. And we're talking about the offensive line is technique. That it's going to take to get these guys caught up so it's the NFL level. The same thing is going to apply to Tech McMillan. McMillan. He's going to run. What does he run in college? He runs a go, he runs a slant, he runs an out, right? He runs a stop, right? Those are the routes he runs. But there's so many more intricacies because people and the players in the NFL will eat those guys up for lunch and spit them out, right? So that's the reason why it's tough unless you're just more athletic or faster or bigger or stronger than everybody else on the field, why it's going to take you a little time to have impact. So I don't give as much credit to these rookies coming in as a lot of people do, even though they were great college players and they have the ability to have high ceilings, they're not there yet for the most part. Now you're going to have your diamonds in the rough. You're going to have your freaks of nature and those types of things. But on overall, the general consensus is if I'm playing a defensive end, and I'm an offensive tackle and I have 4 years in the league, I better wear that guy or else I'm not going to have a job. And he's a rookie. I don't care where he's drafted. I better wear him out or I don't have a job, right? So that rookie has to get better. And he will because he's going to learn it's not the first move. It's going to be the counter after the first move or the third move that wins and beats you. It's after I set you up. Now my athleticism is going to be able to take you over because these guys in the NFL, they're really, really good at what they do, believe it or not. So, I don't care if you're the Jacksonville Jaguars or the Carolina Panthers. I mean, these guys are going to have the ability to be able to slow those guys down. So that being said, is it who do you go to with with where your roster stands, because both teams got equally good in the offseason, and it comes down to really one or two things. How much better did your quarterback improve? Did you get a new coordinator, things like that? The holes that you have. Everybody thinks it's about the best players on the team. That's not what wins championships. That's not what wins games. Is what wins games and what makes teams better and what develops the chemistry and the culture to winning is developing the bottom half of the roster, right? When I can get the bottom half of the roster caught up to the top half of the roster, that's when we have a good team. And that's the challenge for the Panthers and for the Jaguars. Now, that being said, I mean, I could see that game going either way. Here's where I'm going to give, because I've played in this stadium, I've played in this weather, I've played at that time of year in Jacksonville. It isn't Carolina. Right. It is DJ. I was there for the game when Bianca Batuka. I remember when I played back in Tampa and when I played in Jacksonville, we had the black uniforms and we had 4 or 5 guys going in before the game even started and having to get IVs because the humidity was so thick that you couldn't, it's dehydrating you. And no matter what you did, and we're coming from Spartanburg, by the way, so it was already hot down there, but it isn't that type of heat down in Jacksonville where the humidity is there. And for that reason alone, I'm going to give the edge because those guys are down there in that. Yeah. And that's a huge difference. It's like Green Bay playing in the cold, your blood gets thinner. Those things do affect your hands. It affects the way you run, the way you focus, the way you concentrate. That heat is oppressive down there. And for that, that's the reason why I give the slight edge to the Jaguars in that game. I'm going to go slight edge Panthers, and here's why. A few things. Number one, I think that exactly what you said about Travis Hunter. I think getting him early is probably a good thing for us because it's his first game. Matter of fact, I would bet you that Tet McMillan has more yards in that game than Hunter does. Because I wouldn't disagree with that. Because at least Tet's 6'5" or 4 can jump up in the air and he's played receiver his entire life. He's not switching back and forth. I mean, there's going to be there's no doubt there's going to be a transition for Hunter. Moving to wide receiver, if that's going to be the position he plays, running those routes, learning how to break it out and get in and out of those. But once he does, obviously the potential is going to be there. And same on how many plays does he play on defense and offense. So I think Panthers getting him early on the first game helps. Second thing is the Panthers have opened with Jacksonville twice in their history. Both times they went to the Super Bowl. So I'm certainly not saying Panthers. Yeah, so I'm not saying that's going to happen this year. So I'm not saying that. But here's the question: Did they win or lose those games when they opened up? They've won. They won them both.
If you remember, one of them was actually the game when they brought Delhomme in the first game when Rodney Peete was a quarterback. Delhomme came in second half. We're getting our butts whooped, brings us back to victory, and then he never gave the job back. But certainly not saying they're going to the Super Bowl, but we're 2-0 and going to the Super Bowl when we open with Jacksonville and beat them. So I'm going to give us the edge there, and we'll see what happens. Second game, we're on the road again. We're at Arizona, and Arizona is a team that showed a lot of flash last year. A lot of the analysts who cover free agency in the draft love them this year because they've kind of did what the Panthers did. They needed to fix their defense, and they've put a lot of draft capital and money into that defense this offseason. We've had their number. I mean, I've read a lot of Cardinal fans on social media going, "Oh my God, the Panthers! We can't beat those guys, whether they're good or bad. They have our number." And it's true. But there are a lot of similarities. They had to fix their defense. They think they have. We think we have. Both teams have short quarterbacks. Kyler Murray and Bryce Young are probably the same size.
One makes plays with their legs. The other one has to do it from within the pocket.
No doubt.
Has the ability to do those things once things break down, but doesn't have.
Well, I would even give that the edge. I think Bryce Young, you'd give the edge to probably staying in the pocket, throwing the ball. Kyler Murray can break when the pocket breaks down. He can make plays. And not that Bryce can't do that, but we would give Murray the edge there.
He could beat you making plays with his legs, where Bryce Young has to beat you with his arm.
No doubt. So in that game, like I said, two very similar teams in my opinion. Marvin Harrison Jr., who had kind of a subpar rookie year last year. I'm expecting,
and he was supposed to be a transitional player.
The next best,
one of the best things coming. And I promise you, he's going to be.
I think so too.
He's a phenomenal athlete and a great player.
Yep.
And he has great pedigree. So his dad, you don't think his dad was out there, in the offseason, some of his coaches, would say, get with your quarterback. All right, Get with your quarterback. We're going to go out there. We're going to run these routes. We're going to teach you how to do it. We're going to do it the right way.
Well,
type of thing.
We're going to find out about our corners right away because in the first game against the Jaguars, we faced Brian Thomas, who was first-round receiver, the same draft as Marvin Harrison, and he was rookie of the year. No one could stop him. So our corners are going to have tough matchups those first 2 weeks. I think 2 weeks on the road, I think we win Jacksonville. I think we probably lose Arizona. Maybe that flip-flops, but I think if we come off the road off those two starts 1-1, I think everybody be happy.
Well, let me tell you what Vegas thinks. Vegas thinks right now Jacksonville's a 3-point favorite at home, which means they're probably a pick'em in a home game. But whoever these bookies are, whoever these guys are, I would give them, if they were going to come and ask me what's the difference, it's going to be the heat and the humidity.
Yeah.
And they would give Jacksonville another point for that. That is at least worth 1 point, maybe 2, when it comes to home field advantage for Jacksonville. The Cardinals are a 4.5 point favorite at home. So that means that the bookies in Vegas think they're already a 1.5 better, because typically what happens is you give the home team advantage 3 points for, if it's a neutral site, that game would be a pick 'em. If it's at home for that team, it's a 3-point swing in that direction.
Yeah.
With Steve Merrill, our guru guy, that's what he would tell you. So our draft expert and our betting analyst, but he would tell you that with Pro Sports Info. But as far as the Cardinals go, gosh, I mean, I'm looking at second game of the year. Here's what concerns me with the early part of this season. Canales, since he's been here, has not given Bryce the opportunity in the preseason to go out there and get a lot of reps. Right?
Last year, he didn't play the starters at all.
He didn't play the starters at all. Is that a mistake? I have to believe it. He's learned a little bit from that, but I do believe that you have to have your starters getting some quality, game reps, 10, 12, 15 per game, whatever it might be that you determine, and trying to keep guys healthy, but also getting them those body blows so that they get out there and can see those things happen in live for the first time. If he doesn't, I think this could be a slow start for the Panthers. So depending on how the preseason goes, what injuries might happen, contract negotiations still are out there, in the wind with these players, who's going to hold out, who's going to go through training camp, those type of things. But Arizona, I think, on paper, is a better football team. I don't know if they're much better, but I think they're slightly better. And I think that, again, I think you're off to an 0-2 start.
So here's the thing that's interesting. You brought this up. First of all, I don't see how Canales doesn't play the starters, because
how did he not do it last year?
And when he didn't do it last year, and it was a question, and people thought, okay,
it was a wrong decision.
I think we all would agree.
And I'm going to tell you why. And I know it was. And here's why. Look at the results.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You can't argue the results. I mean, Bryce Young got off to as bad of a start as you can imagine. The offense got off to a bad start. And everyone was willing to give Canales the pass. He was a first-year coach. Let's trust him. Well, now we trusted him, and he did a lot of great things, but that's not one. So
and once Bryce got his feet underneath him, he started seeing the speed of the game. He started understanding the offense a little bit better.
Yep.
What happened?
They've got it.
He became a different player.
Yeah, he's got to at least play 4 to 6 series in preseason.
You have to learn from that.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
McMillan is a receiver. You got a new run. So I agree with you. I think they've got to play him. Falcons are the third game, and the first 7 opponents that the Panthers played did not make the playoffs last year. Okay, so that's why they had the 5th easiest schedule according to the NFL.
And if you remember last year, the game here at home was a 36-30 overtime win for the Panthers. So to the Cardinals.
Yeah, they came back late. We got a big lead. They came back late.
The Panthers came. The Cardinals came back late with Kyler Murray, and the defense was not solidified yet.
Yep.
If you get that early lead this time, I do feel like we'll have more talent on the field and more speed on the field, where Kyler Murray is not going to take over, and you're going to have that late run where you have to win late.
Yep. We come home for the third game. Falcons, if you want to call it our rival, everyone always argues who's our rival.
It's definitely our rival.
It's our rival. No doubt about it. And when people say it's not, I'm like, come on, get over yourself.
It's been the rival since I've been on the team, 1995.
No doubt.
To every single year that you're there, is that you want to win that game more than anything else.
No doubt. And now, to me,
division,
if anything, that rivalry is going to take a huge step up. And the reason I believe that is because what the Falcons did in the draft, in their first 2 picks of the draft, they took Javon Walker, who everyone had coming to the Panthers, who's from around Charlotte, grew up a Panther fan. And then with their second pick in the first round, they traded up to they took Pierce from Tennessee, again, Charlotte kid. So 2 guys that were bent that the Panthers didn't draft them, 2 guys that have said that they're going to make everybody pay for it. 2 guys that took the number for their jersey where they were drafted in the first round. So they're making a big deal of this. So they're going to come in more fired up. So obviously that's going to make the Panthers, I hope, get fired up. So I think this rivalry is going to – they also have Penix Jr., a very good-looking young quarterback. The Panthers have a hopefully good young quarterback in Bryce Young. So again, these teams could be fighting for this division title for the next 10 years with a lot of these same players. And so this is a game that I'm excited about. You hope you come back at least 1-1, because the Falcons also seem to have our number.
Well, let me say this as well. And I know that people love playing fantasy football. You look at the team that we just aforementioned with the Cardinals. They scored 36 against them.
Yeah.
Right. This team, the last time the Panthers played, they scored 44 against them in overtime. Both games were overtime, but the Panthers found a way to win that game. Early on in the season, without Penix, the Panthers lost that game to the Falcons. But the last time they played on January 5th last year, or this year, excuse me, they beat the Falcons in overtime.
Yep.
What does that mean for this game? It's one of the few games the Panthers are favored, but they're only favored by 1.5, which makes you again feel like what? Vegas thinks that they're 1.5 better than them on paper.
Yep.
Right. And I would kind of agree with Vegas. In order for me to really get on board with the Panthers, and I want to, trust me, and I want this kid to have a great season. I want him to have a great career, because I love rooting for my home team, and I love being a Panthers fan. Right. And my son loves being a Panthers fan. He loves it just as much as I do. But that being said, this guy has got to play and step up to be the guy he was at the end of the last season. If Bryce Young doesn't step up and perform, this team just isn't going to be very good.
No doubt. No doubt. And the Falcons can say the same thing about Penix Jr., even though they have Cousins on the bench making $1 gazillion. But I think I'll give the Panthers the edge in this one.
So you have the Panthers 2-1.
I got them 2-1, and again, I hope I'm not being overly optimistic, but I hope
there might be
you can talk me into 0-3 too. That's what I'm saying. Like I'm giving what I'm counting on is this, and that's what I was going to get to with this Falcon game. Mm-hmm. What I'm counting on is that the offense we saw the last 8 games plus better, right? So we got a little better now with another offseason, a few new weapons. So I'm hoping that I'm counting on that, because like you said, if that ain't the Bryce Young we got, then they're done anyway. I'm also counting on all the guys they've added on defense.
So you're also counting Bryce Young is going to be the same Bryce Young. You're
if not better.
You're assuming he's going to be the same and got better because of another year under his belt.
No doubt. That has to happen.
So he's growing. That has to happen.
So I'm counting on that. And then I'm counting on the fact that I think that Dan did the same thing to the defense this year that he did to the offensive line last year. So I think our defense, which again, it can't get worse. It was the worst in history. But I think that, I was reading an article today about our defensive coordinator, Evero, and pretty much every year he's been a coordinator, he's had a top 10 defense. Denver, Panther, until last year when he had no players, right?
The worst in history.
Worst in history. But he had no players, and everybody would agree. Jalen Ramsey, the future Hall of Fame cornerback from Miami, has gotten permission to get traded. He's owed a buku bunch of money. Miami don't want to pay him. And listening to him talk the other day at some speech he was giving, he starts talking about coaching and how he's been lucky to have great coaches. And the first guy he talks about is Evero, how he's going to be a future head coach. So now people are obviously thinking, does Jalen Ramsey come to the Panthers? I don't think so. But my point is, I think giving Evero tools now he's got tools in his toolbox. Last year he had no tools. Now he's got tools. Dan Morgan has given him 5 or 6 new defensive linemen. Derek Brown is now back, which is a huge tool to get back. They kept their defensive, their cornerbacks that both had good seasons last year. They're going to add safeties, even though they added one in the draft and they signed a top 5 safety in free agency. There's no way they're not going to be better. And I think they're going to take a big leap. Now, it
can't be worse?
Can't be worse. But I think they're going to take a big leap. Now, is it going to be against the Jaguars?
Do you think they're so let me ask you this question then, right? If you're making that assumption based on the personnel, first off, I'd agree the personnel is definitely better than it was last year. And just getting back, Derek Brown is going to make you a better football team.
Mm-hmm.
He's a run stopping guy. He's going to take some pressure off the linebackers, and you're going to be solid up the middle, especially with the acquisitions you got in the offseason. So up the middle, the Panthers are going to be naturally stronger by getting him back. The question is going to be is that, can your secondary hold up, against, top passing teams? Right. And are you playing with leads and those types of things?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So,
and if we get a pass rush to make it easier on the secondary,
right,
which hopefully we do,
which all kind of it's a trickle down effect.
Yep.
Is your pass rush going to be better? Right. And those are the things. It depends. Are you playing with the lead? Are you stopping the run on first down?
Yeah.
Right. Those things factor into this more than you understand, when you start looking at evaluating teams, and that you have to be able to stop the run. Well, because Derek Brown's better, because they got more beef in the middle, I feel like they'll have more favorable positions, with second and long, where they can pin their ears back a little bit and get after, quarterbacks to get to those third and longs and things like that. And once you get to third and long, then it comes down to, some game planning stuff. Do you want to ring 3? Do you want to blitz? Do you want to drop 7? You want to drop 8? Whatever it might be, in order to confuse the teams. And that's where, I think the Panthers are going to be better in those situations. The one thing that I'm concerned for the Panthers still is their linebacking group. Are you going to be able to cover? But the nice thing that is, if you're able to do that and get off the field in first and second down, or at least you can put your nickel defense in there and bring your secondary in there, so you can take one of those weaker players out in the linebackers and become stronger, with that pass defense. But for the Falcons, I think it's going to be a very similar game as we saw last year. I kind of can see a high-scoring game. This will be Bryce Young's 3rd game. If he doesn't play in the preseason, maybe he'll get his feet in. I do like the Panthers in this game at home against the Falcons. I think that, for me, I have them at 1-2 going in, as we start right now.
One thing that's interesting about this game is, the Falcons defense was almost as bad as the Panthers last year, historically. Like, Panthers were historically bad, but the Falcons were not much better, like literally within touchdowns.
If it wasn't for the Panthers, we'd be talking about the Falcons.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the Falcons, this offseason, approached it the same way as the Panthers did, and they went very hard on defense. Their first 3 picks in the draft, 2 of which we talked about, defensive ends, and then their third one was a safety, Watts, out of Notre Dame, who everybody loves.
I liked him.
So they had a great draft. I mean, if you read all the grades, everyone had the Falcons with a B draft pretty much because of the defensive guys they landed. So a lot of it also is going to be is how quickly do the young kids on their defense and the young kids on our defense get to work.
Yep, that's right.
And so they'll have 2 games each to get it, to get to that game. But that game's going to be fireworks, and I hope the Panthers come into it at least 1-1. But I got them winning that one. You do too. Next, they go back on the road.
You have them at 3-0.
No, I got them at 2-1.
So who they lose to?
They lost to the Cardinals.
Oh, they lost.
I got them, and I think that's a flip of a coin with the Jaguars. I just hope they win one of them. But
I'm gonna tell you what.
I hope they don't go 0-3, because I could see that too. You just don't know.
Well, I mean, Vegas right now has the over and under total for the Panthers at 7 or 6.5. Right. It might have gone up to 7, but I think that's a very good number on, especially the games we're talking about. And you could very easily see, the season kind of, go one way or the other. I'll give you a good example. The Detroit Lions last year, they got off to an incredible start. Minnesota Vikings are another one. Got off to an incredible start. I think they played each other 9 weeks or 10 weeks into the season, both teams undefeated, 8 weeks, whatever it was, and they matched up. And I think Minnesota won that game against the Lions at Minnesota. But that being said, or maybe it was Detroit won that game against Minnesota. And that being said, I think when you look at the momentum and the confidence that can give a young team, that had some momentum coming in from last year, if they win 2 of these 3 first games, I could very easily see them being a playoff team.
Yeah, and a lot of people have them being on the verge of that, and not only that, but
7-10. Depending on what because of your division is so.
Well, the Saints are going to be bad. Falcons, Panthers, Tampa Bay is a toss of the dice. Now you have to give Tampa, you would give them obviously a higher.
They were the playoff team last year.
Yeah,
they won
a playoff game, so you got to give them that. And they added some good stuff in the draft too. Patriots are our 4th game, and they were awful last year. They get Drake May in the first round. Poor Drake May's running for his life. They had no offensive line. Well, what did the Patriots do? Their first pick was an offensive lineman. Some people think the kid out of LSU was the best left tackle in the draft. Some people think he's going to end up being a center. Who knows? But they've replaced several on the offensive line. They've added Henderson, a great running back. We all think he's going to be a great running back. They added Stephon Diggs, who even if he misses the first few games due to coming off the ACL, which they don't think he will, he should be back by game 4 for the Panthers. So we probably will see him. They get a new coach, a coach that we both are very high on. We both love Rabel and the way he coaches, and so
he has some experience, and he's gonna develop a culture. Players are gonna want to play for him, very similar to Dan Campbell. When he's at Detroit, players are gonna buy into what Vrabel does because he speaks their language. He's been there in those trenches. He understands what they know to be the truth, and he's a good leader. Yeah, and he's shown that everywhere he's been as a player and or a coach.
Yeah. And you know what? Because of that, I think the Panthers are going to struggle in this game. I mean,
Gillette Stadium is a tough place to play in. The same thing could apply for the Patriots with their season, right? A lot of it will be depending on the momentum they have. But when you look at the Panthers, they're 3.5-point underdogs against the Patriots at Gillette. So, yeah. Again, Vegas has them as a slight, the Patriots as a slight advantage on paper in a neutral site. It's just, I think, again, it comes down to momentum and how your offseason goes and how your preseason goes and how those first couple of games go. If the Panthers start winning games, I could very easily see them being 4-0. Yeah. Or easily see them being 0-4 or 1-3. Right. I mean, so a lot of it's going to determine on the beginning of the season, how the offseason goes and what they're doing with Bryce Young in order to get him ready for this. But it's hard to root against teams, when you're still not sure of who you are when you're playing on the road.
That's what makes this exercise so hard because we don't really know what to expect. After the first couple games,
we don't know who we are as a football team yet.
And not only that, we don't know who these other teams are. There's teams on here that made the playoffs last year that we think are going to be good, who may not be very good. There's teams like the Cowboys who were awful last year, who have had a pretty good offseason, who may make the playoffs again. They've added.
And that's what's so great about the NFL.
Yep.
Every year, right? Let's say the Panthers, they find something in one of these players, and Tet, he goes out there and he's the next Randy Moss.
Yep.
Right. We hope he is.
Great.
Right? I don't know if he has that ability, but for example, him and Bryce Young, just they mesh. They have that, and then here comes Xavier Legette. Now he becomes a playmaker, and here comes Adam Thielen again. And all of a sudden, he looks like he's revived his career because he's going to be wide open because these two big receivers are running down the field, and everything else is open underneath. Yep. And he's going to eat all day long and have 100+ receptions. All of a sudden, this offense starts clicking, and you get into this fourth game, and you're finding yourself 3-0 at the Patriots, in Gillette Stadium, and you go out there and you wear them out. You're 4-0.
Yeah,
right. But that's what's so great about the NFL. It's easily, we can easily foresee that because we've seen it many years with the Rams. We've seen it with the Lions.
Minnesota last year, J.J. McCarthy was going to be their starting quarterback, their first-round draft choice. He tears his knee up. They end up having to start Sam Darnold. Everyone's going, oh, my God, they're done. Right. They are done. Well, and they did what you said. But they started the season, 8-0 or 9-1?
We could go to the greatest show on turf to find one of the greatest stories of all time that may have done that with who? Kurt Warner.
Yep.
After the worst season ever, they were 3-13 the year before the Rams. They go to 13-3 and go to the Super Bowl and win with Vermeil and Warner. The same type of thing. Trent Dilfer goes out, blows his knee out in preseason. What are we going to do? Well, let's go with Kurt. We have a hunch. Vermeil said that's our guy. Here we go, and the rest is history. Now he's in the Hall of Fame. The Rams win the Super Bowl that year. If the Panthers are so lucky to be able to, do that, who knows? But we don't want injuries to happen. We just want them to catch fire in a bottle.
Yeah, and listen, if you look at what you saw from the Panthers last year, and you look at what it takes to have a team have a season like that where they go from winning 5 games to 9 or 10. First of all, you have to have a good foundation, and I do think Canales and Dan Morgan have built that. I mean,
I am starting to agree with you.
I mean, every player that's been in the locker room, other teams, other analysts that talk to guys there, they do like that foundation there. They're building in the lock from a team standpoint, from a camaraderie standpoint, from a loyalty standpoint. Then you're putting players in there. We're hoping Dan does to the defense what he did to the offense. On paper, it looks good. We'll see. The key is going to come down to Bryce, but I do think that if you look at those first 4 teams we played, isn't it funny? And this is normal, but in those first 4 games in particular, Jacksonville doesn't know if Trevor Lawrence is their quarterback of the future right now. The Cardinals think that Murray's their guy, and he shows glimpses of it, but they were also rumored about taking a quarterback last year. Falcons got a young kid in Penix who they think's their guy, and we have Bryce Young. And
they put Penix in halfway through the season knowing that he was going to be better than what they had.
Right, and then you've got the Patriots with Drake May,
who's a pretty good quarterback.
And then you got the Panthers with Bryce Young. So what's really going to be interesting is out of those 4 or 5 quarterbacks, when we get to the last 4 or 5 games of the year, you probably are going to be able to look and see which, if you look at those quarterback stats of who's having the best year, their team's probably going to have the better rating because it is that important. And all 4 of the teams in our first 4 games are in that same kind of logjam.
So here's what I feel positive with those first 4 games, that first quarter. And that's the way NFL teams break it down. They break it into quarters. First quarter, second quarter, third quarter, and then the fourth quarter, which is those last 4 games, which is your playoff hunt typically, where you're going to make that push or you're going to rest players, right? But that first quarter, kind of gives you a feeling of who you're going to be as a football team, right? And it kind of develops your identity. For the first time, DJ, in 5 or 6 years, at least since Tepper has been a part of this organization, right? I feel like, and this is not a Tepper thing, it has nothing to do with Tepper.
Yeah.
I feel like this team has a foundation. It's the first time in 5 or 6 years that I felt that, right? Where, hey, we got enough to go to war with, and we may not be as good as the Eagles up front on this position or that position, but we can match up front with anybody in this league.
Yeah.
Right. And on any given Sunday, we can beat or compete with those if other things go our way. So I have not been able to say that in last year or the year before or the year before that or even the year before that.
No.
This is the first time in 5 to 6 years that I can say on the offensive line, we have a solid foundation, right? We have 5 good starters.
Yeah.
Well, at least 4, and maybe a potential that left tackle still has to go. He still has to show that he
take another step like he did last year.
Take that another step, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But at least we have 4 of the 5 guys that are solid players. All right. We're not quite to playoff every year level yet, which not only the first 4 or 5 guys, the backups have to be, good enough to start elsewhere. And that's when you start really
with their backups. They retained Christensen, who had a great year backing up last year. They kept Easton Corbett. I mean, so they've got depth there for the first time. You're right.
And
in 6 years.
And that's why I'm saying those 2 players, Christensen and Court, are guys that could start and contribute on other teams and still be good quality starters.
Yep.
Right. They have good backup. They have good depth. They have guys that can play multiple positions. So on the offensive line, we're there. On the defensive line, we're young. Right. But you got hungry dogs that are going. You get your best Derek Brown back. You get your best defensive tackle back, one of the best in the league when he's healthy.
Yeah.
Right. Hopefully he's going to be hungry and healthy. He's playing for a contract and he wants big numbers just like everybody else does. We hope he stays healthy. But then you add the acquisitions in the offseason and you go out and you draft 2 young defensive ends that are going to be hungry. You got some speed on the edge that we haven't had, maybe in forever. Jadeveon Clowney, he's gone, right? But don't be surprised. Don't be surprised as if halfway through the preseason they bring him back.
Yeah, that one's surprising.
Because they saved a bunch of money. If nobody else takes him, they've let him go try the market. If you can get Jadeveon Clowney for cheap to help mentor these young players and bring him back and give you another pass rush specialist, right? I would love to bring him back here home where he wants to be. He didn't want to leave. He wanted to be here. He wanted to get his money too. Don't get me wrong. But, if you bring him back, now you've got 4 or 5 guys that are on a rotation that makes you a dangerous, defensive front.
Plus Wanham, who didn't play the first 6 games and ended up with 6 sacks, played good. They signed the defensive end from Minnesota who had 7 sacks last year, a young kid. They got Bobby Brown from the
I don't
Rams.
look at sacks and saying, I mean, I know other people do, and that's the way you measure stats, right? But I don't look at stats and say, okay, this guy's got 7 sacks, so he's a great player. I look at what does he do on first, second, and third down, and can he hold up, and does he make plays, and is he disruptive? Is he a disruptive player?
The thing I like about who Morgan signed is every one of them are young.
Yeah.
So they have 4 years under their belt, 3. So when I say 7 sacks, I'm thinking 10 this year.
Yeah.
So yeah, because you're right. Sacks can be a mop up. It could be whatever if you're past. But
it could be a quarterback falling down. You go and touch him. That's a sack.
But I think that Dan has signed guys that are their best years are coming, and hopefully they're here.
Well, they're young, hungry players.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's what
they want to get the big paycheck.
Yeah.
And so, so after the first quarter, and we'll speed up a little. I know we're jumping in, but in the first quarter, I hate to say it, I'm going to say 1-4. I think it can be better. 1-3. I hope it's better, but for what I'm going with right now, which is we're going off what we saw and guessing on paper, I'm going to go 1-3.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's very fair, to be honest with you. And I could see this is going to be the easier stretch of their schedule, in my opinion.
Well, to make the playoffs, you got to think they got to go 2-2.
I think if you're going to make the playoffs, 2-2, 3-1.
Yeah, you got to be 2-2
because I think
at least.
the rest of the schedule starts, ramping up a little bit. When you get to the Rams, and you get to the Niners, and you get to the Bucks, and you get to even the Jets or the Cowboys or the Packers.
They're
right?
all
Or the Seahawks.
I mean, so let's go to Game 5. We're back at home for only the second home game of the year against the Dolphins. I'm a guy who is of the belief that the Dolphins are on the downward swing.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like they've had their few years to try to get it done. Tua with the concussions, he's 1 concussion away, most likely from not playing again. I think most people would agree with that. Their defense is very good, but they lost some key contributors in free agency, and they also looks like Jalen Ramsey is going to be gone. Offensively, of course, they got Tyreek Hill. They've got Waddle. I mean, they've got weapons everywhere on offense. The question is going to be, is Tua going to be healthy enough to get to him? I'm going to give the Panthers a win in that.
Let me ask you a question. You may know or may not know, but I can't remember when. How many times have the Panthers played the Dolphins? Maybe 5.
Yeah, 4 or 5 times it seems. I know we were beating them 14-0, if I'm not mistaken, last year, and they came back and beat us.
What's our record against the Dolphins? I think
no idea
of all the NFL teams, other than maybe the Washington Redskins, because I think the Washington Redskins have the best record against the Panthers of all the other teams.
Yeah.
And I'm talking the Cowboys, I'm talking the Niners, I'm talking all these other. I don't know if we've ever beat the Dolphins.
We may not have. It was 2 years ago. We were beating 14-0 Bryce's rookie year. And I remember that Robert Hunt, the guard that we signed from them, who did so good for us last year, they actually threw him a pass against us and he rumbled for like 15, 20 yards, I believe. But
and then that's that. I mean, I know that past has nothing to do with the present and what's going to happen in the future. I'm just letting you know is that that team, for some reason, the AFC, the way they play, the AFC teams, the 3-4 defenses, we're not used to seeing that in our division, right? We're used to 4-3 defenses. Tampa covered 2. You look at the Falcons, they play a traditional 4-3. You know, you look at the teams that we play that we're built to play against, the same thing.
Yep.
And you play these teams that are bringing, you know, the Pittsburgh Steelers are another team. You know, they play that 3-4. The blitzes are coming from everywhere. You know, it's just not the way you're built is not the way that's going to match up well against their defense. And I think the Dolphins are one of those types of teams that match up well against the Panthers and what they do. So it'll be interesting to see Tua if he's healthy. I think they're a much better football team. Obviously, Tyreek Hill is going to be the most explosive player on the field. I'm not sure or sold on their coach and what he's going through in his identity crisis that he's having. You know, and being down in Miami. But you know, being here in Carolina, I think it's gonna be a close game, but I think the Dolphins win that one.
All right, so I've got us winning that one. You got the Dolphins. Next game, and this will be a huge game here in Charlotte, the Cowboys.
There's no spread on that game, by the way. That's why I didn't give it to you.
For the Dolphins?
Yeah, for the Dolphins. And I'm not sure why. I don't know what they're waiting
Probably
for.
because they're waiting to see who's going to be on their team. Yeah. If Ramsey going to be gone.
Right.
You know, Cowboys, though, come into town. They just made a big splash last week, obviously adding Pickens, the great wide receiver from Pittsburgh.
Is that an addition or is that addition?
Well, we'll see. I will say this on that. Mike Tomlin doesn't trade receivers that go on and have better careers. And that's a fact. When he gets rid of a receiver, they go.
Antonio Brown.
I mean, you could Juju Schuster-Smith. He went down.
Yeah, I mean, he got old. I mean, Juju Schuster-Smith just got old. He's still a good player.
But they knew when to trade him. I mean, he was okay. Yeah. He bounced around, you know, Antonio Brown. So when Tomlin gets rid of a receiver, I'll take his word for it. Now, Pickens is young. I mean, he's still on his first contract.
But
so old ain't going to be a problem. It's going to be a problem in the locker room.
He's a problem in the locker room. And you already have a lot of issues, you know, with this team. The one thing you do have, however, is you have an established quarterback in Dak Prescott. That's his football team.
Yep.
Right. And how is that going to transition to, you know, a guy that doesn't want to be there? Pickens has already said he wants out.
Well, he just said he's not going to sign a long-term deal because he wants to keep his options open. So
which means he wants out. Because maybe not he wants out. He just isn't going to sign a deal. He thinks he's going to have a huge year and put himself in a better position to make more money. So I think that's what it is. I think he's riding that he's going to have a great year and get paid. So he don't want to sign a contract now before the season. He wants to go kick butt. I guess there's a reason why he's getting traded because he's just stupid if that's the case. Because every player that goes to a new franchise wants to sign a big long-term deal when they go. Because you know,
I think he's going to be a plus for him. I know he can be a problem, but I think he's going to be a plus. Dallas's defense is solid. They got, you know, all around. Obviously, Micah Parsons, who's a free agent. They got to sign him.
But their secondary was either hit or miss.
Correct.
They have
Diggs got hurt, which hurt them.
Well, they have their safety that led the league in interceptions. I can't think about. Is it not? It's the defensive back that had
Diggs.
Yeah, Diggs.
Yeah, he got hurt last year.
He's either a hit or miss, though. I mean, I've seen times where he goes out there and he takes chances and he's going to make great plays.
Yeah.
But I've also seen times where he gives up and quits, and they're torching him because he's not giving the effort that is necessary. So, I think that the Cowboys are a very vulnerable football team, and if you jump on them early, they will quit. But if they get that lead, they're a front-running football team. They will bury you and score a ton of points.
Well, you know, they didn't have a running game last year, and I'm still not sure that they do. I mean, they drafted Blue out of Texas, I think, in the 4th or 5th round.
Have you seen him play?
He's good. He's good. He's fast.
He's explosive.
He is, but there's a reason he was in the 4th round. And I'm not saying he won't be a good player, but yeah, we actually
I wanted the Panthers to take him.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's a lot like Etienne, very similar running back.
He's a guy that when you watch and he catches that ball, he makes your eyes jump because of how explosive he is.
But you're not going to establish a running game with him.
No, I agree with that.
I'm saying.
And that's the same thing even at Texas. He doesn't have the size to be an every down running back, but he absolutely has the ability to make a play when he catches the ball in space.
Oh, yeah, no question.
You know, that's the one thing that scares the death out of anybody is speed kills.
The other part of that equation with the Cowboys is, and I hate this, but when you go to a Cowboy game against the Panthers, it's 50-50 at best when it comes to the crowd. Now, a lot of that's been because by the time we've played them, the Panthers have been so bad that a lot of the Panther fans are like, I'm not going to go waste $500 for a day and watch us get our butts kicked by the Cowboys.
A lot of Panthers players are transplants too, so this is their opportunity to make some money back on their ticket.
And this is where coming in with momentum means a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So if we get off to a great start,
that's right.
There'll be a lot more Panther fans and Cowboy fans. The crowd will be electric. I still think I do think the Cowboys are going to be good. We've actually played well against the Cowboys throughout history. I think they beat us the last time we played them, but
they also don't forget they also have CD Lamb and George Pickens.
Do.
So
that's what
I mean,
they're good across the board. Running back, we'll see. Now their offensive line, they lost a Hall of Famer, 2 Hall of Famers, but they've replaced them with arguably the best guard in the draft, which a lot of people thought they took too early. So we'll see how their offensive line comes together. But I do think the Cowboys are going to be pretty good. Again, man, this is one of those things where on paper I would take the Cowboys, but I don't think the Panthers are going to start off 1-6. I just don't. So I'm going to give them a win here. I'm going to give them the home field advantage. I'm going to give them a W there, and hope that whether it's this game or not, it equals out. But
I do like their chances against the Cowboys. Playing on the road. I think I don't know if you remember the playoff game. 100 years ago, when Barry Switzer didn't know where Charlotte was. I know that's long, few and far between.
That was awesome.
I'm not sold on their head coach, Mike McCarthy. I'm not a big believer in him.
They fired him. Remember they brought in, which you'll be less sold on Schottenheimer. They brought in Brian Schottenheimer now.
Okay, well, I mean, we'll see.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll see what happens with that. But I think that was a necessary thing for them to do with their coach.
Yeah, we'll see with that. But I think we could squeeze that one out.
I'm going to give the Panthers a win there.
All right, so now we got 2 wins, I think, on both of our cards, and now we go back on the road to the Jets, which Jets are always, like the TMZ of football, it seems. The Aaron Rodgers crap, and then they fire their coaches and they fire their GM. I mean, it's always dramatic there. This offseason was the opposite. They went after Justin Fields. They got him. They say
who's going to be playing with a chip on his shoulder.
Who's going to be playing
to prove something?
No question. And they gave him a contract, so they believe in him. They believe he can throw the ball where Pittsburgh wasn't so sure that he could. They've got 2 very good running backs.
That's still to me. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off with that. I mean, that still befuddles me. Not only that. With Tomlin, because I think Tomlin's a good coach to a certain degree, but I think he's a stubborn ass SOB. Right?
I totally agree.
How in the world, especially as you get into the playoffs, with what Fields was doing at the beginning of the season, beating playoff teams, beating the Ravens, beating teams, giving themselves an opportunity to go out there and do that.
Yep.
With him as your quarterback. To say that Russell Wilson was your established starter from the rest of the season out when he came in on that Sunday night game and played well, but Fields never really touched the field after that.
Yep.
And you just almost gave up on him. And I don't know what happened behind closed doors in the locker room and what was said and things like that. And sometimes those factor into things of us not knowing. And Pittsburgh has always been a team that has really kind of kept their mess internal.
Yeah.
And I give Tomlin a lot of credit for that because that's hard to do.
Yep.
But they've really, kept that within the organization. But I think to anybody would see that Fields was a starting quality quarterback that should have been playing on those teams, especially as you got closer to the playoffs. And now he's with the Jets. And unfortunately, he's with the Jets because the Jets, just have a way of killing quarterbacks.
Here's what he seems to have on paper. They drafted left tackle with the 6th pick in the draft, the kid out of Missouri, everybody loves. They're going to put him at right tackle to start the year. They needed an offensive lineman. They've got 2 very good running backs with Bryce Hall, and the running back, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, from Tennessee, big dude.
Mm-hmm.
They're Cedric Wilson, their wide receiver, one of the top 15, 20 in the league. Very good receiver. Tight end, Other receivers, they've got some guys, but I don't know if they've got the guy. That'll remain to be seen. Defense was solid last year. I mean, their defense was actually very good last year. I'm going to give the Panthers a win on this one. I think we're going to beat them. I think Justin Fields with the quickness.
Alan Lazard, you got Josh Reynolds, you got Garrett Wilson. Lazard is a guy that could torch us.
But Lazard, once Aaron Rodgers signs with the Steelers, Lazard will get traded to the Steelers. Watch. Seriously, he goes wherever he goes. Mark my word. He'll be there.
That may be the case.
He'll be there.
Defensively, you look at the Jets. Sauce Gardner's obviously a great player.
They got 2 very good corners.
They have 2 really good cornerbacks up front. They're kind of a little bit of suspect, but it's a game on the road. I'd flip a coin for that. And just because I'm a Panther fan, I'm going to give the win to the Panthers. So that gets 3 wins for them.
I'm with you there. And then that 2-game winning streak that we have them having there is going to come to an end pretty quick.
We can.
By the way, that game is at New York Jets. So,
and Vegas has the Jets as a 1.5 point favorite,
right?
That, which means they think the Panthers are better. And again, a lot of it has to do with the momentum for me. But if the Panthers get going, I can very easily see them 6-2.
You could talk me into 6-2. I could talk you. You could talk me into 0-7. That's a problem. We just don't know yet. But the next game number 8, we're at home against Buffalo Bills.
And you know what the funny thing is? This might be the only game the Panthers win all year long.
The Bills.
Yeah,
the one we don't think they have a shot at.
They're right. We have no chance to win, and somehow they go out there. The Bills don't show up. They fall asleep. They eat too much Bubba's barbecue or McCoy's
barbecue.
They eat too much McCoy's barbecue, and they don't show up. And
listen, your point's valid because people forget. Last year, and you can make whatever excuses you want, but last year the Panthers lost by less than a touchdown to the Chiefs and the Eagles, the 2 Super Bowl teams.
The Panthers were beating the Chiefs until the last second.
Well, they got hosed on a bad call.
On the call, and
they were beating the Eagles, so they lost to the Super Bowl teams by a touchdown.
They were tied or winning the game in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, and that's with the worst defense ever. So we say the Bills will probably come in here and beat us, but you never know. I mean, the Bills lost to the Patriots last year and they stunk. So
they might rest Josh Allen and say, "Hey, listen, we're gonna give you a bye this week, bud."
They're gonna pull a LaMelo on and give him a break. But we don't even have to dive into that. I think both of us have the Bills getting the Panthers there. You never know, but the Bills are loaded and they just seem to reload every. I
would say that would be, regardless of where the game is at. Probably the biggest point differential. I would say the Bills, and I haven't looked at what the spread is yet, but I would say the Bills would be favored by 10 points, which is huge in the NFL.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe 6, but
let's see what they have them at 7 right now.
Okay, so touchdown.
Opening lines at 7, a touchdown, because that game is where?
It's in Charlotte.
That game's in. That's the reason why it's 7 and not 10.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Okay, so Bank of America game here. Yeah, it's a 7-point spread.
So move on, back on the road.
Bills might.
They could be a Super Bowl team.
They could be a Super Bowl team for sure.
I agree with you.
No surprises.
Week 9, we're in Green Bay. Now, Green Bay, obviously, you mentioned it, is a tough place to play. This time of year, week 9 is when it's going to be cold and nasty. Not as cold as it was when you played there, but week 9 ain't going to be warm.
No.
Dylan, look up what the date is on week 9.
It's November 11th, right, November 2nd.
So it's going to be still cold. Not where you played when it was.
That's going to be a nice, cool day for the big fat guys to go out there, and it's going to feel like a nice spring day. You forget all the pads that you have, and you're weighing 300 pounds, to get out there in 30-degree weather is a pretty good deal. Now, coming from 130 degrees where you start the season to this, now that's cool, right? But the Panthers are already be acclimated. It's not going to be in the teens or the negative degrees where you look at the Lambeau Field and say, damn. I don't want to go up there. This will be a game you look forward to and going and playing because you're going to get good weather.
Well, the Packers are a team, again, that made it all the way to Philadelphia last year in the playoffs. They lost, and then Philly went on to play the Rams. Green Bay had injuries all year, if you remember.
I'm not sure how I feel about Green Bay yet.
I think that they're going to – well, they spent a first-round draft choice on a receiver for the first time in like 20 years. Golden out of Texas, who was my favorite receiver in the draft. I liked him even better than Tet. Their young receivers last year showed a lot of growth. Jordan Love, but they were banged up a lot. They were hurt. Their defense is always going to be good. They've got a lot of talent on offense. Jacobs at running back, who they signed from the Raiders last year, had a great first year with those guys.
Josh Jacobs,
they're going to be back in. Injuries really is what got them last year. So assuming that they're healthy and knowing that game's in Green Bay, again, I would love to see the Panthers pull it off, but I don't see that happening. Here's what's going to happen in order for the Panthers to beat Green Bay is that,
the offensive line for Green Bay, who has struggled at times, giving protection. The reason why Aaron Rodgers left, or one of the big reasons why, is because he's getting beat up so bad back there. Jordan Love gives him a little bit more athleticism, so you can't just pin your ears back and attack. You still have to, rush in your lanes and keep contained and doing all the things that they're do because he has the ability to escape. But this is a game I can see our defensive ends really having some success because of their speed and athleticism. If they start feeling themselves, this is where you kind of start seeing
by week 9.
Week 9. Okay, you're no longer a rookie anymore. You're starting to step up. You've established yourself. You know who you are as a player and what you got to work on. I could really see our defensive ends kind of having a career game, against the Packers. And I'm not going to put it out of the equation. It's just not very likely, but I would still, if I'm a betting man and betting with my head, not my heart, I'm betting the Packers.
Yeah, you got to take the Packers.
If it's an even game. Now with the spread, let me see what the spread is on this game. I'm not sure. Let's see, 7.5. So it's the biggest spread. It's bigger than
even the Bills.
It's bigger than the Bills, but it's an away game for the Panthers. So 7.5 point spread. I'd probably take the Panthers, but if it's a head-up game and it's a pick-em, I'm taking the Packers.
Week 10, and we won't have to spend much time on this. Week 10, we go, we get back home against the Saints. Everybody knows the Saints are going to either be starting a rookie quarterback, Schaff out of Louisville, or Spencer Rattler, the rookie that they took out of South Carolina last year, who actually started, I think, 6 or 7 games. So they're going to have a young quarterback regardless.
The first time all year, the Panthers
be a favorite.
Are favored.
Yeah, what do they got them at?
1.5.
Yeah, and see that shows you the lack of respect Panthers have right now that they're only a 1.5 favorite at home against.
No,
the Saints.
that's games at the Superdome.
No, game 10's versus it's in Charlotte. It's versus the Saints. We're back home for that one after Green Bay.
Let me look back. Maybe I hit the wrong button.
I was gonna say that I would think it'd be more than 1.5.
Oh no, you're right. I hit the second time they played them. Let me see. Game. It's 4.5. Panthers are 4.5 point favorites. The only 2 times they're favored all year is against the Saints. And we're 4.5 and 1.5.
Yeah, and so if the Panthers are going to do anything, we don't even need to talk about this game. That's
they have to sweep.
They got to sweep.
They have to sweep.
Got to sweep.
If you want to have a chance to make the playoffs and get over that 7 games, you have to sweep the Saints.
No doubt. Then we're in Atlanta. And we talked about those 2 teams earlier, about Walker and Pierce and Watts and how they rebuilt their defense, how they've got a young quarterback, very similar to us. So, we don't win, it doesn't seem, in Atlanta without Cam Newton. It just, and I don't remember the exact record, but I'm going to go. I got us beating the Falcons here. I've got the Falcons beating us there. And for a lot of the same reasons that we discussed in game 3 of the season of why I thought we would win, I think their home field advantage there, their defense, they're going to have these young kids 9, 10, 11 games in now. So I've got the Falcons winning game.
Yeah, they're
11.
favored by 3. So it's basically a pick 'em game on neutral site. I think when you start looking honestly about rosters, these 2 teams are about equal.
Yeah, I agree.
Really are. I mean, with what the Falcons have done, what the Panthers have done in the offseason, the quarterback play, I think, is about equal in the NFL. Penix came in halfway through the season. I think it was a big year for Penix, but he's very similar to Bryce Young. He has the pedigree, took his team to the national championship. They ended up losing to Michigan, but it was a very competitive game. First time since 30 years they've been, and the Huskies. And I'm a big believer in Penix. I think he's a hell of a leader, a hell of a player, but this is a big season for him. And, I think both teams are very, very similar.
Falcons, Panthers are going to, when we look at the next 5 years, it's going to be, if 5 years from now, Bryce Young is still the Panthers quarterback, and if 5 years from now, Penix Jr., that means that these 2 teams are doing well.
And you know what it's going to mean? It's going to mean that, whichever quarterback plays better in those games, because each team is probably going to get better at the same rate.
Yep.
Whichever QB has a better game, better stats, is on target. Guys make the same, the plays for him, is probably going to be the team that wins that game.
I agree. And like I said, 5 years from now, if both quarterbacks are still their quarterbacks, that means both these teams are probably making the playoffs and doing well. Go to week 12. We are at San Francisco. Monday Night Football. The Panthers are back in primetime for the first time in quite a while. 49ers are coming off a bad year. Obviously, they had McCaffrey out for the whole year. They had the other receiver, and I can't remember his name, that they gave the big contract to, out for the year. Purdy was out. They had so many injuries last year.
Well, especially towards the end of the season. Yes. I mean, they had their whole roster, but this offense kind of goes as McCaffrey does.
Well, Purdy just signed a new deal, so they got him locked in, right? McCaffrey says he's 100% healthy. So like you just said, as their offense goes, he goes. Deebo Samuel, they traded to Washington. They got him out of there. He was kind of becoming a headache. Also wasn't as effective as he had been.
Ayuk.
He's coming off an injury.
Yeah,
ACL.
He's coming off an injury. You have Ricky Pearsall, who's a very explosive player
last year. Yeah,
he's a very explosive player. And you got obviously one of the better tight ends in the league with George Kittle.
Yep.
Their offensive line, when healthy, I think is as good as anybody except for maybe the Eagles. And there was a couple of 2-3 years ago, they were the number one on both sides of the ball, very similar to what the Eagles were last year.
Yep.
And when there was a group of starters that they had playing, and that included McCaffrey, that included Samuel, that included, obviously Brock Purdy, Trent Williams was on that list as well. When all those guys were together, right, they were undefeated. Right. And that was the stat going into it. Obviously, that didn't take place. A lot of those guys missed. But on defense, you still have, I think one of the hardest hitting safeties and one of the hardest hitting secondaries in the game. Fred Warner's a big, good player. Very good, very explosive.
They're working on a new contract with him right now. But they lost several other stars. I think they lost 4 stars on defense, which will hurt.
But, their safeties, their corners, I think were as physical as the corners you're going to find in the game. And it'll be interesting to see, the challenge with our new young receivers, and the size that we have, how they match up against those corners for the Niners.
I've got to go San Fran just because, again, I think injuries were why they were bad last year. If they are healthy. Now, again, you could sit here and say Brock Purdy has gotten hurt the last 2 years. McCaffrey has been hurt quite a bit throughout his career. So the game's
on the road. We play well there. It's a Monday night game, if I'm not mistaken.
It is.
So, the time is not going to be an issue for the Panthers. Your clock going over there. Yeah. It'll be an afternoon game for them, but 7-point favorite. If McCaffrey's healthy, playing against the Panthers, got to believe he's going to have a 3-4 touchdown type of game.
Yeah, I agree. I think 49ers get that one, and Panthers come back home where they,
because he's the guy. Well, here's the matchup too, right? There's not many players that we played during the regular season in our division that are going to have the capabilities of McCaffrey. Where are we weak, in my opinion, on this team is where linebackers. Where does McCaffrey expose in passing? Linebackers.
Yep.
One-on-one matchups against linebackers. Against the Panthers, I think he eats us up.
Yeah, I agree. I think they get us, and then we come back, and it doesn't get any easier. Matter of fact, it probably gets harder because we come home against the LA Rams. The Rams are always a tough team. Matt Stafford is another year older, but still has a rocket arm. They bring in Devontae Adams, great wide receiver, to go along with Puka. They reloaded running back. They took the kid out of Auburn, who a lot of people love. Defensively, they were great last year. You talking about a team that took 2 defensive ends that needed defensive ends and got 2 rookies that both had 10 sacks. Exactly what we're talking about, hoping the Panthers did this year. Well, that's the Rams. And so Rams are going to be really good. Obviously, they're well coached. They're going to be coming to Charlotte. We're going to be coming back from the West Coast after a Monday night game, so it'll be a shorter week. I don't know if that really matters. Something tells me we beat them here. I don't know why. Maybe they take us for granted. I don't know. Something tells, and we play good against the Rams too. Maybe that's why. But I'm going to give us a W on that one.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm going to be realistic. I'm going to be the glass half empty guy. And they're just better than us. Their lineup, their offense, they're more established. Puka Nacua is one of those guys. Devontae Adams is one of the best in the league. You look at their offensive line. Their center's one of the better players.
No, they're good
at that position. And Matt Stafford, and if Stafford gets hurt or anything like that, you still got Garoppolo on the roster.
Mm-hmm.
I do believe, going back to the Niners, I believe is they had the defensive rookie of the year at defensive end for them. It was either them or the Rams.
No, the Rams had him.
Oh, the Rams had him. Okay,
yeah,
so
Rams had him.
So and that's another. You get that guy. He's going to be hungry, and he's going to give our tackles all you can eat. It'd be a good test for our left tackle to see, kind of where he's at, and how we're going to face that, that type of explosive player.
So you got the Rams.
I got the Rams.
All right. So I'm going to take Panthers on that one. Week 14 bye week for the Panthers. So
we're going to win.
Yeah, they're not going to lose. And I will say this too. People have different opinions on where you want your bye week. To me, I think it's better to have it later in the season. I don't know if week 14 is a little too late, considering the fact that now there's 18 regular season games. But when you were a player, and let's say in the 18-week schedule, which you never played that, but when did you like your bye?
Right in the middle.
Right in the middle.
Right in the middle, because I tell you why. It's a lot different now for these players than it was back then. And here's why. It has nothing to do with the physicality of the game. That's still probably pretty much the same. It has to do everything with training camp. Training camps for us back then were so taxing on our bodies that we needed a break, after 4 or 5 weeks just to recover. Right. So our bodies could heal. So we could recover.
They didn't have all the rules they have now where you can't practice twice a day.
That's right.
And all
so the CBA has come in and really been helpful for the players to extend their careers, because DJ, I tell you, I don't care. Maybe it was after year 3 for me. Your knees would be so shot. You'd start getting tendonitis. Your elbows would be hurting. Your fingers would be sore. You couldn't squeeze your hand without feeling like, they were going to break. So, having those 2 weeks off, it kind of lets your body heal, recover. Now I don't know if it really matters as much with that preseason. So I would still think that they're leaning towards week 8, week 9 is where they would prefer it. Especially after a couple of hard games like the Bills and the Packers. I'd like to see them maybe have that week 9 bye, but they have it where they have it. And, they're going to have to get through some of those other games, and hopefully they're not too beat up to do it.
Well, the good thing is, number one, I think everybody agrees that the Panthers have a lot more depth this year than they had in the past. So hopefully that will help having a bye this far down. But then their last 4 games, the last quarter of the season, as you referred to it, to me, it's tough but winnable. So you start off at New Orleans. Who knows, but we got to think that will be a W for the reasons we talked about earlier.
But the scary part is the Panthers have not done well off of buys, right? You look at their last, probably 4 or 5 years, coming off of buys, they've been very slow, very sluggish. Mm-hmm. And I know that game is going to be in New Orleans. So, that's another kind of flag that if the Saints were going to get us, that would be the game they did it, because coming off of a bye, you'd expect to be fresh, but, still such a young team. How do you come out of the locker room at halftime? How do you, get ready for the games? You're still trying to find your identity, and you would think by then you'd have it. This would be the first time a lot of these rookies have a bye.
Well, but you're still taking the Panthers there, don't you think?
It's a coin flip, but
Saints could also not even know who their quarterback is. They might be in the Arch Manning, and
they might find Kurt Warner.
You're right. No doubt.
You don't know, but again,
they got to sweep the Saints, or they're not in the playoffs anyway.
I do feel like the Panthers are better than the Saints, so I will take the Panthers.
Then week 16, we're at home for our first matchup against Tampa Bay.
We play them 2 out of the last 3 games.
I hate that. I do too. I don't like it at all.
I hate that.
And last year we should have beat them 1 game. We got hosed on a call.
I hate that. I don't just hate that for the Panthers. I hate that for any team that should have. It's almost like playing back-to-back games.
Well, the thing about it is it could be a good thing. For instance, if one of the teams is already locked in the playoffs and sit their starters, but if this last game comes down to, and it's at Tampa Bay, and I'm skipping over the week 17 game against Seattle, who Seattle should be solid this year. They're always a solid team. They got Sam Darnold now, so we'll see if he can do what he did.
Which Sam Darnold did they get?
Yeah, did he get Minnesota Sam Darnold, or did they get
Tampa Bay is going to be favored both games over the Panthers. No doubt. They're going to be favored at home. They're going to be favored by 3.5 when the Panthers are playing them, and then on the road they're going to be favored by 7. Depending on, like you said, where teams have what they've done during the regular season. I don't think any of these teams are going to be good enough to be able to sit players, at the end of the season. So it could very easily be, a fight to see who wins the division and or goes to the playoffs.
Well, you saw Tampa Bay made the playoffs last year because Atlanta at home blew a game that if they would have won would have been a different story. So I'm going to go with the win over Tampa Bay here. I'm going to go with the win over Seattle here, and then I'm going to go with the loss.
We beat Seattle.
I think I think Seattle's, again, very similar to our team. They've got Sam Darnold, a quarterback that doesn't scare anybody. They traded DK Metcalf. They got rid of the other receiver that's been there forever, not Lofton, but what I'm talking about. They also are rebuilding on defense. They put a lot into their defense, as did the Panthers.
They got some pretty good defensive players.
They do. They also are flying across the country to us. So I get
that's the one thing that I have to remember. You're right. What you just said right there. That trip from Seattle to the East Coast is probably the most taxing trip, and the propensity to win games when you're traveling that way is a lot less than when you go the other way, right, because of the time differential. And we, as players, are creatures of habit. So, and I'm playing a game at 10 o'clock in the morning, and that's a 1 o'clock start, I believe. No, it's a 4 o'clock start. So that's a 1 o'clock start for the Seahawks. Maybe not be as taxing because of what that would be. But still, nonetheless, the travel, the distractions, everything. It'll be interesting to see what Seattle does with that, if they come a day early, maybe on a Friday to kind of get acclimated and things like that. But nonetheless, I do think the Seahawks are a better football team than the Panthers in that game.
So you'll get the Panthers L.
I think the Panthers lose that game.
And then what about the game before that? Let's get you down for the Bucks here against.
I think we got 2 L's to the Bucks.
And so you think we lose the last 3 games of the year?
Yeah,
okay,
I do.
So let me do some math here. Give us some elevator music while I'm doing math because I'm not very good at it.
If I'm not mistaken, I think I have the Panthers at 5 to 6 wins.
Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, you got the Panthers at 6 wins.
This is what Vegas has them at.
I'm taking
the under on the 6.5.
6.5 is the over.
I'm taking the under on the overnight.
I've got them at 1, 2, 3, 4.
TJ has them at 14 wins.
6, 7, 8. Okay, now that I look at it, I got them at 10 wins. So
they're going to the Super Bowl.
All my friends if we beat Jacksonville in game 1, but all my buddies like to give me crap that I'm the big optimist when it comes to my teams, and you
don't realize it until you realize it.
Well, the thing I was just realized, I do think I'm very objective in it. I do think here though, I think when I had us getting off to a 1-4 start, I played makeup a little bit because I don't. Last year I took over. I think the win total last year was 6.5.
It was 5.
5. And
it was 5 or 5.5.
It must have been. It was 5.5.
It was 5.5.
We won 5, right? And I lost that bet.
Yeah.
So this year it's 6.5, and we jumped 3 games in Canales' first year. So if we jump 2 games this year, then we're over 6.5. I got to believe this roster is 2 games better than last year.
I think with the hard part for you to grasp because you're wanting this team to do so well is I don't think that you understand the value of what other fan bases feel about their organizations.
Right.
As well.
No doubt.
Their fan bases, the Falcons, the Saints, the Bucks, the Seahawks, they all think that they're got better just like the Panthers did. There's no way that we're going to not jump 3 games and win because of, the same deductive reasoning you just used. So because of that, I always try to bring it back to, the reality of it is, and that's all based on, this is why the guy makes the most amount of money at the position, how well your quarterback plays.
Yeah, no doubt.
That's going to determine the wins and losses when you're looking at the amount of difference between winning and losing in the NFL is so minute. We say it all the time. It's 1 play, 2 plays. There's about 3 plays in the game that are going to make the difference between wins and losses. In college, it might be 10, might be 15. High school, it might be a lot more. In close match games, which the NFL typically is, it's going to be 2 or 3 plays a game that are going to make the difference in the outcome of the game. And that's for the Panthers, where you look at the difference between 10 wins or 6 wins. You give them the benefit of the doubt. In those wins, and you think Bryce Young is going to be a great player. If that's the case, I think he's going to be a good player. If you think that he's going to get that much better than Penix does, or you think he's going to get that much better than anybody else, right? Then stick with your 10 wins.
Well, and I would rather say over 6.5. Like, and here's why, because I do think they will go over 6.5. So like you would bet under, I would bet over.
Yeah.
10 wins seems crazy to me, and I could easily pick off a few that I would take back.
Like the Seahawks?
No, I think they'll beat the Seahawks.
What game did you give them that you don't think they're going to win?
I could see them losing at the Jets, which you haven't won at the Jets. I could see them losing at the Jets. I could see them. I haven't beaten the Rams here. That's the easy one I could flip in a heartbeat. Because that one is going off.
That goes to 8-8.
Yeah, that goes to 8-8. So I think that would probably be.
Well, but you got 17 games, so that's 8-9.
8-9. So I need to pull out one more victory.
Yeah, you need to pull out one more victory.
I mean, I could see them losing to the Jaguars in the first game.
Or the Cardinals. You have them winning both games.
No, I got them losing to the Cardinals. Basically, I think they're going to split the first 2, one way or the other. I think they will get the Falcons. And I think they'll split with the Falcons for the year, right?
I agree with that.
I think they will sweep the Saints.
I agree with that.
So that would give them 2 wins, 1 win with the win over the Falcons. That's 3. If you give them 1 between the Jags and the Cardinals, that's 4. Then they've got to get 2
you
more
haven't
wins.
beaten the Cowboys. I don't have beaten the Cowboys.
Yeah, and that one could be, who knows what Cowboys will get there.
You might have convinced me that I did, but I don't.
Yeah, I mean, and it wouldn't surprise me.
Listen, to your point, you're going to look at 2 or 3 of these teams, right, where you could flip a coin: the Jaguars, the Cardinals, the Cowboys, the Jets.
Yeah.
And even the Saints or the Falcons, and say, I could very easily see the other thing happen, right?
100%.
So it's kind of like the mud and the mud ball in golf. It has a tendency to kind of work its way through it, and really your record is who you are, and it comes down to that's what Vegas has.
And then injuries. I mean, look, last year
injuries are a big factor.
If we would have did this last year, everyone had the 49ers going to the Super Bowl. They didn't make the playoffs.
That's right.
Injury, so you don't know that as well, and that's why doing this now.
That's why everything kind of works its way out. But Vegas usually does what?
they win.
They usually set the number on exactly what they think.
Well, here's what I think. I think that we'll save that, and then we'll do this again the week before the season. So we'll see preseason. We have seen camp. We'll see if some of these young kids look like they're players. We'll look if somebody got hurt. We'll do it again.
I don't think I'm going to change much.
You might not, but you might. If Bryce Young's hurt and out for the year, you're going to change even worse.
If Bryce Young doesn't play in the preseason,
you might change even again. Yeah,
I mean, those first 2 games look like a lot, more daunting.
If he doesn't play in the preseason, I'll be shocked. And that would
definitely change your
I'd go 0-2 right away.
Yeah,
no doubt.
So you would go from,
but I just can't see him putting him in that same position last year.
I hope not,
because if you don't learn, his first pass of the year was an interception.
Yep.
like that was the writing on the wall. He's got a new big receiver that you just put a first round pick in.
You need the reps.
You got to get the reps. So I don't see that happening. Before we go, and Frank and I wanted to just talk real quick. NBA, NHL are both in their conference championships. NBA we'll talk about Friday, but you've got Oklahoma City against Minnesota. That first game's tomorrow night.
A lot of people think that OKC is just going to run away with
for
that.
The series or minus 350 favorites.
I don't know if they think they're going to sweep, but it's a 4-2 series. That would give you the 350 odds.
Yep. And then you got the Knicks against Indiana, and the Knicks are minus 160 for the series. Obviously, they beat the Celtics.
I can see that going to 7.
I think the Pacers are going to beat them. Like if I'm picking that right now,
I can see the Celtics. I think that series goes to 7.
Indiana just comes at you, man. Like they are relentless.
They're young. They're aggressive. They've had some time off.
Yeah.
Brunson just played in. The Knicks just played in the battles.
Yep.
The same thing. With OKC. OKC played with some battles too.
No doubt.
Minnesota has. I think my new favorite player, Ant-Man.
He's awesome.
I love the way he plays.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think that if what's their big 7'4"
the Frenchman, Gordon.
Not Gordon.
Why am I not thinking?
His name? I'm blanking. But if he plays well, the soft Frenchman.
The big tall soft Frenchman.
The big tough salt from Minnesota. If he plays well, I think that they have a chance. But I think that they're going to attack him, and we'll see what happens.
Then you got the NHL, same thing. Dallas Stars taking on the Edmonton Oilers.
We got some skin in the game there.
Well, the Edmonton Oilers are minus 135. But yeah, now we got the Hurricanes are in the conference championship. They're taking on Florida. Florida's a minus 130 favorite for the series. Carolina opens that at home, which is the same thing they did against the Capitals. They finished that series on the road, I believe. But the Hurricanes, no one really thought they'd be here.
Really?
They play really great. They play great defense. They're great against penalty kills. Great goalkeeper. Fun to watch. I told you I've been to a couple of the playoff games, and there's nothing as much fun as in sports as going to watch them play. But Raleigh, I normally like to give Raleigh a hard time, but they do a great job with the Hurricanes, and the fans are great. That's going to be a heck of a series, though. Florida's good, man. Gobert. Rudy Gobert.
I was going to call him Gasson.
Yeah, well, I said Gordon. I'm thinking Gordon, but Rudy Gobert.
Rudy Gobert.
Yeah, Rudy Gobert.
Sorry, I had to get that
I'm glad you figured that out because it was driving me crazy. But anyway, Hurricanes take on the Panthers. Panthers won last night 5-1 over the Maple Leafs, and so they'll come in. Carolina will have a little bit more of a rest. But yeah, so we're down to the nitty gritty in the NBA and the NHL.
When I start watching hockey.
Well, there's going to be those matchups are great.
And you've been to the games over.
Man,
was it PNC Arena?
Yes.
Yeah, and the atmosphere and
it's unbelievable.
It is really is.
I mean,
great.
you ought to buy tickets and take Brax, because I'm telling you right now, it is unbelievable. Like you can't even describe it. Like how loud it is.
Well, I've been.
Oh, you've been? Okay, you've been. Okay, it's crazy.
I've never taken my son.
I haven't taken my boys either, and I've tried to
have a blast.
He would have a blast. I was going to buy tickets this week, but I'm not allowed to be in a car that long.
He doesn't need any more jerseys, by the way.
No, he's got every time I see him, he's in a different jersey.
I took him to an NBA game. We said we had courtside seats. For the Hornets.
Yep.
And next thing he knows, he has the LaMelo Ball jersey.
Yep.
And I tried to talk him out of it. I said, buddy, that guy never plays, so I don't know if you really want that jersey, but he did. He loves playing on that NBA 2K.
Yep.
He's a great player on there, but since then he could name off every Hornet. I mean, he has the mind like a steel trap, unlike me.
Even watching football, I'll watch him playing PS5, and he'll name everybody Justin Jefferson, everybody on every team,
and every player on every team.
He actually has the Justin Jefferson jersey.
Oh, he has a Jefferson jersey.
I thought I saw him in one.
Yeah, he has a Jefferson jersey,
and he's got a Sanders, the quarterback from South Carolina. I've seen him in.
Yeah, and he also has a Saquon
Barkley.
jersey.
Does he wear those to school? Is he allowed to wear those to school?
He wears them to school.
I would say he probably wears them every day.
He wears them every day, and he has this. He has this little thing. It's 100 degrees outside here in Charlotte right now, and he has these under sleeves, and he's wearing them, and
Does he wear eye black to school?
No, if he could, he would. But he thinks he's the coolest thing. He got the chains.
I love it, man. He's got to have the swag early on.
He's got the little swag.
All right, man. Well, thank you guys for joining us. Everybody have a good week. Friday, we'll recap a little of the NBA as well as the NHL. May have a surprise guest joining us too, awesome. to do a little good old day talking, and then also looking at the NFL. Hopefully, we'll have that set up. We'll see you Friday.